Call the April 23rd, 2013 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Coombs.
Present.
Councilmembers Bagley.
Here.
Finley. Here. Levison. Here. Samori.
Present.
Santos.
Here.
Witt. Here. Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at first call, public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have the opportunity to speak during public hearing items this evening or at the final call, public invited to be heard on any of the items at the end of the meeting. Valerie, are there, I guess we need to first approve the minutes of April 9th, the regular session. Councilmember Levison?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move the approval of the April 9th, 2013 minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Are there any agenda revisions or submissions of documents?
Yes, Mayor Coombs. Under special reports and presentations, we need to add the Longmont Chamber of Commerce Leadership Longmont class, and then also there was additional information delivered to you on, I believe, Thursday of last week for 9A and 11B, but the items haven't changed.
Okay, thank you. City manager, is there a report?
Mayor, Council, we do have one item. Sandy will give an update on Senate Bill 25.
Okay.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. As you may remember from our discussions during our legislative dinner, Senate Bill 25 would basically mandate collective bargaining for firefighters across the state. In the city of Longmont, we already have collective bargaining, but it was done, quote unquote, the right way by having our actual voters vote on a charter amendment that would allow that rather than mandate a statewide, calling it a matter of statewide concern and actually requiring for other municipalities to be able to do that. This bill has now passed the Senate. Just passed the House, and CML is requesting that we oppose this bill and be able to speak our voice to the governor for a veto. So based on their request, I am asking you all whether you'd be interested in opposing Senate Bill 25, basically because it is a mandate on the state side for collective bargaining rather than allowing the locals to do so.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. What I've seen from emails going back and forth between CML and us executive board members are that it's very important to not just get a paper letter in, but to also send an email copy to the governor urging him not to approve this piece of legislation. And from what I've been told, the fact that our city has collective bargaining, that it took 2 tries to convince the electorate to do that, is really a compelling argument as to allowing voters to have the choice and not having it mandated from the top down. And I think that a well-written letter telling our story and how the work was done between the people wanting to unionize and the electorate is a very compelling argument to have the governor not comply with this legislation that's been put forth. So I would recommend that we direct staff to, I'll wait until, I'm not going to make a motion right now, but my recommendation is that we direct staff to write a letter and then also send it in email form, and if necessary, have all of us sign it. If you have an electronic copy of my signature, have every single one of us sign it.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would make that motion that we direct staff to write that letter.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, Sandy, you've got your directions, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any special reports or presentations, so.
No, you do. You just added one. The introduction of the Longmont Chamber of Commerce
you're right.
Leadership Longmont class. I believe Kathy Weber Harding and Don Haddad are both here to introduce this.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor Coombs, Mayor Pro Tem Santos, and City Council members. I'm Kathy Weber Harding, President, CEO of the Longmont Area Chamber. And tonight, you'll be introduced to the 2013 Leadership Longmont class. The person introducing this has been the co-chair of this committee since 2007. At that time, I was not president of the chamber, and Dr. Don Haddad, superintendent of St. Vrain Valley School District, was instrumental in getting this program up and running and making it the program it is today. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Don Haddad, and he'll be introducing the class to you.
I would like to thank Kathy and the Longmont Chamber. And Kathy Weber Harding is a perfect person to chair this group because I think she exemplifies leadership and has done an amazing job along with her team and the Chamber Board in bringing the Chamber of Commerce up to a very, very high level of credibility and respect throughout our community. So, Kathy, thank you for everything that you've done. Truly appreciated. The Leadership Longmont program, this is our 7th year, and it's really a highlight for me. Each year we get to meet a new group of individuals, and then collectively this group grows exponentially every year, and we usually have a reunion. But what you begin to see is you see folks that are interested in developing their leadership skills and getting involved in leadership activities throughout the community, whether it's on the chamber board or members of the city council. Various areas you'll begin to see the different groups and the different individuals as they form, and nothing's more important to the future of our community than strong leaders. So it is very exciting. I'm going to also recognize the city of Longmont for having a number of participants this year and in years past, and so that's been very exciting for us as well. We also have been well represented, the hospital and education and a variety of other groups that have come, and people learn about this community and this city and what makes it tick. So it really is an excellent group, and it's my pleasure at this point to introduce them. And are they going to come up as I introduce them? We'll come on up to the front. Okay, sounds good. All right, from Front Range Community College, Cherie Butler. From Via Mobility Services, Nicole Cavallino. From Jimmy John's, Alan Crowder. From Clarity and Purpose, LLC, Beth Dorsey. From the City of Longmont Public Safety, Dan Eman. From Front Range Community College, Cynthia Garcia. From the Tiny Tin Center, Sherry Carmen. From Distribution and Collection, Chris Campman. From the City of Longmont. From Front Range Community College, Catlin Keenan. From the I Have a Dream Foundation, Daniel Sickink Johnson. From the Longmont Museum, the City of Longmont, Eric Mason. From the St. Vrain Valley School District, Mary Miner. From Donaldson, Chancho, and Grant PC, James Mock. From MetLife Auto and Home, Becky Moore. From the Silver Creek High School Leadership Academy, Doug Palmer. From the Meade High School Business Leaders Program, Lachlan Quintana. From Volk and Bell, Tina Ramey. From the City of Longmont, David Starnes. Also from the City of Longmont, Maria Tostado. from the City of Longmont, Land Program Administrator Daniel Wolford. From Wright Kingdom Real Estate, D. Yarwood. From the Elevations Credit Union, Laura Zavala. And from Flood and Peterson Commercial Lines, Executive Eric Zerbruggen. Ah, they're good. They're good. I appreciated the help.
Wow. We can do this. We'll take a couple to make sure, right?
All right. Where are we looking? You?
I think you're looking there first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, now you can look here. Okay, here we go. We'll do another one. Okay, here we go. All right, I think we got it. Thank you.
Okay, the first person on the public invited to be heard is Peyton Peterson. Please come down and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Peyton Peterson, 4224 Portofino Drive. All right, no, that's not right. Mayor, City Council, my name is Peyton, as I stated. I have some really exciting news for you guys. Today, I was working with some location scouts and producers from a production company in California that's actually looking to shoot some, if not all, of a movie in Longmont, Colorado. This comes after a couple months of debating with locations all across the Front Range. I was able to pull them into Longmont after showing them all of our great features that we have here. Some details on it. The movie is called Dear Eleanor. It's a road trip movie about two girls, they're best friends, that do a road trip, and they're trying to find their role model, which is Eleanor Roosevelt. It's based in the 60s, so we're looking for, 60s type thing. It's a family film, so that's a good thing for our city. It's nothing too, risky. The director is Kevin Connolly, who was featured in Entourage, which is an HBO TV series. Has two A-list actors that I cannot tell you guys about yet, but they're it's exciting. We're looking to shoot mid-May to mid-June, so about a month out here. So really soon here, we're looking on locking down locations right now and working on all that. But they were very impressed with the city. They came out here today. They're going to be here all week, and we're looking around. But we really need you guys' help. Right now, we're looking for businesses and residents that are interested in getting involved with us. I just put a website up, filminlongmont.com, where you can go out and you can list your business or your residence out there if you're available for us to come shooting it. We'll work on details and whatnot with you on a one-on-one basis. But what we're looking for, this is key, is residents in commercial buildings that are built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, or early 60s. So anywhere in that range, we're looking for any type of building. They've been location scouting. We're looking for houses, and so we need 3 or 4 different types of houses. So if anyone knows anyone with houses like that, feel free to go to filminlongmont.com and submit photos of your houses. That only goes to us and our little database, and we will contact you if we're interested in your house to work on details and whatnot. That's about it. If you need any more information on the Film in Longmont website, there's a contact page which has an email address, which is contact@filminlongmont.com. You can send any questions or emails to that, and the production crew that's currently in Boulder right now will be replying to all those emails. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Peyton.
Yep.
Kendra Bezetta? Hi.
Hi, I'm Kendra Bezetta, and in my fourth grade class at Alpine Elementary School, we are working on action projects to help our community. I am working on the problem of cruising in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. And I don't mean the cruising on a cruise ship, because you can't cruise in a neighborhood. This problem makes me feel scared and worried because you usually don't know who is cruising, and they could be a threat or danger to you or someone else. For example, I was really scared when two teenage boys were cruising up and down my street in their white car. Every time they saw me, they would say hi to me, laugh, go around the block, come back, say hi to me again, and laugh again. They did this quite a few times. The scariest part is I don't know who they are. This problem scares me, and I don't want to feel like I'm in danger when I go outside and play. I am here today to ask if the city can put up no cruising signs in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods where this is a problem. Also, if the policemen were made more aware of this problem, they might watch more closely for cruisers in and around our city. Having no cruising signs put up would make me and a lot of other kids in many neighborhoods feel a lot safer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ariana Lopez?
Hi, my name is Ariana Lopez, and in my fourth grade class, we're also doing action projects. And mine is in my neighborhood, down Clarendon Drive. There's this little circle. It's like there's like plants and trees, and we like to play around there. And but there's two ways that cars can go. There's and then like what scares me is that our friends like ride our bikes around there and stuff. And then the thing is that like I see like cars like swerving around there, and then like on their phones and not paying attention what's happening. So and then I just really want to like fix that because and we don't really have any like signs that say caution children playing around. So I was wondering if we can put stuff that up. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we got it. Jeffrey Justice, please come down and state your name and address.
Jeffrey Justice, 1503 Lamplighter Drive. First, I want to congratulate the two young people who spoke out like that. You were heard loud and clear. I'm here tonight. I was here about a month ago speaking on dogs shot by police. I'm here to follow up on Senate Bill 13226. I hope some of you have heard about it. It's the Dog Protection Act. I was asked by Senator Balmer to testify at the Senate Judiciary Committee, where the bill was passed unanimous, bipartisan. I was asked 2 weeks later to testify again at the House Judiciary Committee, bipartisan, passed unanimous. Okay, it was voted on in the House. The bill passed 64-0. Bipartisan, unanimous. In this day and age, that's an accomplishment in itself. Okay, this bill is 17 pages long. I hope that some of the city officials will read this. Basically, it mandates a minimum amount of training for police officers in Colorado to prevent and minimize dogs shot by police. I had to sit and listen to the victims of these tragedies. It was not a proud day for law enforcement, and we're hoping that this training will minimize this. What I'm asking tonight is for Longmont to not only obey this ordinance, which I do believe the governor will sign with support like that. I do believe very soon it will be law. I want us to not just follow that, but exceed that and lead the way. We have a state-of-the-art humane society. We have animal control that I think rates one of the top in the nation. So I hope that we can somehow have the police department devise a training program that exceeds Senate Bill 13226, that Longmont leads the way. Because don't think it cannot happen here. It's happened in Commerce City. It's happened in Erie. It's happened in Thornton. It's happened in Adams County. It can happen here. I just ask that we urge the police department to exceed this and maybe somehow get back to us at a different time, at a different meeting, and tell us the results of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Judith Blackburn?
Judith Blackburn, 3724 Oakwood Drive. Mayor and council members, we've had filming, cruising, dogs, and I would like to bring us back to fracking. I had hoped to come tonight to re-invite you all to the conference that Our Health, Our Future, Our Longmont is putting on Saturday, this coming Saturday. But I have since found out that you're having a retreat this weekend. And so I'd like to extend the invitation to the people that are here, people that may be watching on television, and say a little bit about what to expect. Our keynote speaker, making his first appearance in this part of Colorado, is Dr. Tony Ingrafia, professor of engineering at Cornell University, who has made a specialty of studying fracturing mechanics and its dangers. He was named by Time magazine one of 2011's People Who Mattered. He knows whereof he speaks when he explains the limitations of fracking technology. Dr. Ingrafia will be in town Friday through Sunday, so perhaps it would be possible to arrange a short visit from him during your retreat. Another speaker of interest to those of us who are concerned about how relatively unstudied the fracking process is Dr. Jeffrey Tyne, a research geochemist, who will report on how often studies on health and safety associated with fracking have either been corrupted when funded by oil corporations or dismissed if they challenge the dominant narrative. If all this seems too depressing, I encourage folks to stop by for the grand finale. Hazel Miller will be giving us her heart and soul in concert at the end of the afternoon. The BFRAC Sure, nice pun, conference this coming Saturday is a unique opportunity for Longmonters and others up and down the Front Range to hear the other side of the story from what our governor is promoting and to get re-energized as we continue the work of keeping Longmont a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Peter Levine, please come down and state your name and address.
Hello, I'm Peter Levine, 709 Kimbark Street. I wish to speak to the Council's attitude toward Amendment 64. Your refusal thus far to consider the commercial regulation of small amounts of marijuana as provided by Amendment 64 is disturbing. Your justification of the ban for the amendment's inclusion of the Prohibition Clause is mere legalese because prohibition is not what 58% of the electorate voted for, and the fact that the Council would take that as its default position demonstrates a contempt for the democratic process. Whatever individual reasons each of you might provide, the tolerance for the adult emporium notwithstanding, and the fact that we're unlikely to get a new Vincent van Gogh museum here, to me seems rather irrelevant. I think the council needs to rethink its position. Amendment 64 calls for the regulation of marijuana to be similar to that for alcohol. That's what was passed. The voters passed it. It's up to the council to do the work necessary to make it happen. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. No clapping. Paul Tiger. Followed by Sky Wilson.
Paul Tiger, 634 Main Street. 634 Main Street because I have leased that spot, and that's where I'm going to have a company called Tech, where we'll sell sonic screwdrivers and virtual insanity. More of the sort of the same stuff that I was doing when I was down on Nelson Road. But that's probably sometime next month when I finally get it together. But really, I came to talk to you what Peter just talked about, and that is that I understand that there's about 7 precincts that voted against 64. And if you look at a map of our county, the folks that voted against 64 are generally in downtown Longmont. So I get it that you know, you have to give some respect to that. But I also look at where those precincts are, and I notice, for example, one of those precincts happens to contain a lot of retirement homes and extended long care, term care facilities. I don't want to be brusque about it, but is that really the future of Longmont? So lots of folks have voted for 64, and I thought that what we could have done is what we talked about a little bit when we got rid of the pot shops, and that is that it could be done by zoning. And that is that you could put them in commercial and industrial spaces and keep them off of Main Street, keep them away from schools. That, you know, and I personally like windowless buildings that can be secured, because if people are going to have grows, that's the place to have them, not in residential areas or anything. But you can solve this by zoning. And I was looking back at the figures from income, and in a 2-month period, the city gained $12,000 in sales taxes from what was then 4 dispensaries. That was between it was actually between December and February of 2009, I guess that was. So it's a pretty big boon for you, and it's not only in marijuana, but you know, they're selling all the accoutrements and, you know, pipes and head space products. So I thought you'd give that a try rather than just tossing it out the window. And by the way, look for the big neon marijuana leaf in my window. We're not selling any of that, but we do condone it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sky Wilson. Okay, then we'll move on to, oh, here's Sky.
Sky wasn't able to make it, but
Okay.
so
Well, unfortunately, you can't have substitute speakers as part of our rules. Sorry. Sorry. Strider Benston.
Sorry to usurp Sky. I love her name. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. I came to talk about guns. At Sandy Hook, the killer fired 153 bullets in less than 5 minutes. In Aurora, the man had a 100-round magazine, and he only stopped killing people because it jammed. At Virginia Tech, the shooter had shot 250 bullets. At Tucson, I think it was 31 bullets, and he was stopped because people tackled a lady, an elderly lady tackled him when he had to change magazines. 4 incidents, more than 600 rounds of ammunition shot, large number of people murdered. The latest, Gabby Giffords, who was shot in the head by a gunman in Tucson. Great article in the New York Times last Thursday. Senators say they fear the NRA and the gun lobby, but I think that fear must be nothing compared to the fear the first graders in Sandy Hook Elementary School felt as their lives ended in a hail of bullets. These senators who voted against background checks made their decision based on political fear and on cold calculation about the money of special interests like the National Rifle Association. The way to stop a bad guy with a gun is not to give him the gun. West Texas blew up last week. Exactly 66 years and 1 day previously, Texas City blew up, killing 600 to 800 people. What was the cause? Identical. A large storage of anhydrous ammonia blew up. West Texas facility put in a report 2 years ago, said there was no danger in the plant. They have not been inspected since 1985. We have forces in this country that want to get rid of all the social network, all the infrastructure, all the regulation, all the safety measures that we have created a government and a country to bring about. Let me point 3 numbers. During this century, since 9/11, by extreme definition, we could count less than 300 people killed by anything called terrorism. In that same period of time, 61,000 workers have died on the job in this country because of safety violations and mine explosions and so. 335,000 people in this country have died of gun murders. Thank you. Pay attention to the numbers.
Matt, working theme?
You said it correctly, sir. Good job.
That's 2 in a row now.
Guys, I think that definitely we should take a moment to pray for the people of Boston. One of my friends was a runner, and he was in the line of the action of those 2 bombs. I just want to thank those little girls for what they said about cars speeding through town. And also, definitely, let's keep Longmont definitely a drug-free place so that the children can keep playing around and knowing that no drugs will be around. And that's what I would have to say. And also, I'm just glad to definitely be in Longmont because definitely I live with the greatest aunt and uncle that I could ever have who live out here, and I'm thankful for that. I live at 500 Leslie Street, Unit 42. I'm sorry, forgot to say that, Mayor. On behalf of the rail fans of Colorado and also around the whole communities of Boulder County, definitely I am hoping that definitely the city of Longmont could have rail fair days. If you guys ever look it up online, make sure you guys look up railfairdays.com. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that ends first call, public invited to be heard.
Mayor Coombs, the first item on your agenda is second reading, ordinance 2013-08, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the City of Longmont Enterprise Water Revenue Bonds. And Jim Golden is here with a short presentation.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, I'm Jim Golden, Director of Finance. This ordinance is for you tonight on second reading, authorizing the city's 2013 wastewater revenue bonds. The bonds are in the amount of $7,740,000. In 2009, Longmont voters authorized the city to sell over $21 million of wastewater revenue bonds, and we sold the first portion of those in 2010. So this is the remaining authorization that's outstanding. These proceeds are being used to finance improvements to the wastewater treatment plant, and the improvements include repair and replacement of aging structures and equipment necessary to the plant's operation, including a new headworks building, primary clarifier improvements, sludge control building, and gas piping modifications and digester improvements. So we're estimating that these bonds will come in at an interest rate near 3%, with our annual debt service on the bonds at around $570,000. The scheduled sale is to take place on the morning of Monday, May 13th. I need to correct, I did have the 14th in your communication, but it's actually going to be on the 13th of May, and we will report back to you at your meeting on the 14th on the results of that sale. The ordinance that is in your packet and that you're considering tonight was drafted by D. Weiser, our bond counsel from Sherman and Howard, and he's here tonight. He'll be able to answer any questions that you have regarding that ordinance. In addition to the ordinance, the ordinance actually authorizes the official statement, the registrar on paying agent agreement, and the continuing disclosure certificate. All those were included in your original packet from 2 weeks ago. Last week, we were notified by Standard & Poor's that these bonds will have a AA rating. Our previous rating on the bonds that we sold 3 years ago was also AA, so they've affirmed our rating still at AA with a stable outlook looking ahead. So I wanted to point out that staff in Public Works and Natural Resources did a great job presenting to Standard & Poor's information regarding the utility itself, the improvements that are being financed by the bonds, and actual improvement plans looking ahead into the future as well as the financial situation for the enterprise, the wastewater enterprise. And I think all that was critical in getting this rating affirmed at AA again. So that we're happy with that rating and looking forward to the sale in a week and a half. So with that, we also have Jim Manier, our financial advisor here, who's working with us on the sale, and a number of PWNR staff as well that we can all try to answer any questions you have on this.
Okay, is there any questions? Councilor Rivera-Lewison.
I'm going to ask my perennial question about if the wisdom of the people in Washington takes away the tax-exempt status of muni bonds, how much will that cost us? I know I asked that on first reading and thought I'd ask it again on second reading, if anybody can give a guesstimate.
Let Mr. Manier take a shot at that.
You can just give us a round number.
Round number. Well, a brief introduction to your question, Mayor and members of council. I'm Jim Manier with BLX Group and serve as the city's financial advisor on capital funding items. If the tax exemption were to be eliminated entirely, I would project that these bonds themselves, the $7,740,000, for which we're currently projecting at the 3% interest rate that Jim mentioned, about a total interest payment around $3.2 million. You could pay potentially another $1 million of interest on top of the 3.2 if it were not for the benefit that you and other governmental borrowers receive from the exemption of interest on federal income tax. So that's obviously the most extreme example. There are other scenarios in which the benefits are potentially going to be capped, and I think the market's anticipating some of that these days, but it certainly would have a dramatic impact on this bond issue and, by example, other tax-exempt issues that we project in today's market and in the future.
So $1 million on a $7,740,000 is pretty significant.
Right, I'd say almost a one-third increase in the interest cost itself.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, my understanding is if the tax exemption for muni bonds is diminished, it will also apply retroactively to bonds we have out there.
Correct. However, the risk, I should say, it's potentially would be applied that way. If it does, it would have an impact on the investors. Obviously, the city would not pay higher interest as a result of that, but the benefit to the bondholders who own those bonds would be reduced.
Yes. And I guess there was one other question I had. Well, I guess the kind of the marching orders that we've been given from both Colorado Municipal League and National League of Cities is how this potential reformation in the tax code can seriously affect taxpayers at the local level. So I appreciate you coming up with that round number. The other thing is that I would, I read something in the paperwork that these bonds would be available locally for sale with, I think the bottom I read was $5,000 increments, and that I just want to make sure that anybody in Longmont who wants to take advantage and invest back into their city in a very stable, nearly risk-free vehicle has an opportunity to choose to make that investment. I just want to make sure we get that information out there for people that would want to invest back in their city.
Well, let me explain how that process will work. We will, as required by our city charter, be allowing potential underwriters to bid competitively on these bonds. So the bonds will be awarded on the basis of providing the lowest interest rate to the city. At the time that we award the bid after the sale on May 13th, we typically notify the local media about who the best bidder is, and that should give the public the best chance to contact their local brokers, and if they're interested in investing at a really low interest rate, which is our goal, then they can pursue that line of communication.
This interest rate is still better than what you're getting on your savings account at any other institution in the city. I haven't seen anybody who's getting 3% on a savings account or a checking account, any kind of account. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on having the AA rating confirmed. That was outstanding.
Any other questions? If not, I'm going to open this up for public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item on public hearing? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd move ordinance 2013-08.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is ordinance 2013-09, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the following parcels of real property at the Vance Brand Municipal Airport. Hangar parcel H30 to Arnold and Stephen Peckar, H31 to James D. Douglas, H32 to William Mansfield, H35 to Michael L. Kastner, H36 to Dan Barry, H38 to Douglas Jackson, H39 to William F. Hanahan, H40 to Douglas J. Sheffield, and H41 to William G. Copley. And Tim Barth is here to address questions if you have any, but doesn't have a formal presentation.
Okay, is there anyone from council that has questions?
I have a question. How come we have to vote on these?
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council, Tim Barth, the airport manager. Councilmember Finley, to address your question, the way the city charter is set up, all leases are required to come before the council and vote regardless of term.
Has one of these hangar leases ever been denied?
Not since I've been here.
Okay, no further questions. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Witt.
I would like to move ordinance 2013-09.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, it passes 7-0.
Next item is ordinance 2013-10, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease portions of Alta Park and the Meadowridge property to Growing Gardens of Boulder County. And John Clark is present, I believe, Susan is, to address questions if you have any.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Suzanne? Seeing no questions, is there anyone, I'd like to open this for the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Samori.
I would move ordinance 2013-10.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2013-11, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 15, Appendix E7 of the Longmont Municipal Code on adequate school capacity between the City of Longmont and the St. Green Valley School District RE1J. And Aaron Fosdick is in the audience to address questions.
Okay, are there any questions from council members? Seeing no questions, I'll open this up for public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Samori.
I would move ordinance 2013-11.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Next item is ordinance 2013-12, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of a 5-foot by 8-foot electrical easement located between lot 17 and 18 in Wallace Edition 4th filing. And again, Aaron Fosdick is present to address any questions. Or Joni.
Okay, are there any questions for City Council for Aaron? Seeing none, I'll just open this up for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Witt.
I would like to move ordinance 2013-12.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, passes 7-0.
Next, we have the consent agenda, and I will say first off that we are pulling item F off of the agenda entirely. It'll potentially come back later. First item is ordinance 2013-13, bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for the expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2013. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for May 7th, 2013. Item 9B is ordinance 2013-14, which is an ordinance amending 2013 through 17 capital improvement program. The public hearing is scheduled for May 7th. Item 9C is ordinance 2013-15, an ordinance amending Title 14, Chapters 14.48 of the Longmont Municipal Code on broadband services and 14.32 on rates and regulations governing electric service. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for May 7th. Item 9D is Resolution 2013-32, approving the Memorandum of Understanding between public land managers in Boulder County regarding a regional mountain trails master plan for Boulder County. Item 9E is Resolution 2013-37, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding for pavement reconstruction on Main Street between Ken Pratt Boulevard and 3rd Avenue. And staff does not have a need to pull any items.
Councilmember Levison.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull item 9B for a correction on the CIP form.
All right.
Did you say B?
B.
9B or D?
B, as in boy.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the items to be removed? Do you want to make a Councilmember Witt?
I'd like to move the consent agenda minus items B and F.
All right, let's vote. Okay, it passes 7-0. Council Member Levison.
Thank you. I just wanted to note something on the CIP form on this item for, it was page 30, well, it's page 38A. It's the D21 Storm Drainage Rehabilitation and Improvements. I think it's page, yeah, getting the right page here. It would be page 439 of our packet, the electronic packet. The CIP project lists the related city plans or other CIP projects. One of the checkoffs was fast track transit station area. My understanding is that this storm drainage rehabilitation is having to do with rehabilitation of a storm sewer line identified for the new sidewalk on East 9th Avenue. So I just think that the fast track station area doesn't really have anything at all to do with fast track station area. And if anything, you know, it would be possibly related to the Kensington revitalization plan and maybe as a stretch, historic East Side neighborhood revitalization. So I would just like to amend the CIP to remove that check mark for the fast track station area. But Nick is stepping up to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor.
Can you turn that on, Nick, please?
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council. It can go either way. The reason why that has been checked on there is that D21 program is a program of many different projects, and as we've been working for several years on the station area site, there's a lot of drainage improvements down in that area that need to be made as part of it. Since that's not an impending thing, it very well might be appropriate to remove that at this time. It's not a direct issue.
Well, and I guess when we're adding up the cost of what we're doing with fast tracks, and somebody might go through the CIP and say, oh, here's another, you know, X number of dollars that we spent on, you know, $50,000 that we spent on fast tracks as a contribution. That's really not, this is not within the fast tracks area, and I would just like to make sure that we keep things a little bit clean, since it does indicate the location of the project is on East 9th Avenue. So I would move that we remove the check mark for fast track station area on the project D21 on the CIP, what would the CIP amendment on this ordinance.
Councilmember Samori.
Nick, would you come up? Do we need to do those drainage improvements along the fast tracks anyway, at some point?
Councilmember Samori, at some point, with redevelopment and with the river corridor issues, we will be doing drainage improvements down there, I would anticipate. Obviously, with the current scheduling of fast tracks, that probably would not be within the confines of this, necessarily of this 5-year CIP.
But we wouldn't need to necessarily wait till fast track comes for us to do those improvements.
No.
Okay.
Councilmember Witt.
Councilmember Levison, so did you make that a motion? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear a second.
Oh, I guess. Councilmember Witt.
I think I appreciate Councilmember Levison's due diligence on this. Not sure if we need to fix it right now. So it'll get worked out before we pay for it. I promise you that. But I think I would like to move 9B.
Why wouldn't we be discussing that during the item 9B? Yeah, excuse me. Okay, yeah, that's it. Okay. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been
Who seconded that?
It's not seconded then at this point.
I guess
Oh, you did? Okay, all right.
Okay, so Councilmember Swearing seconded. I just want to make sure because this was added as a new project, and I just want to make sure it accurately reflects what it's related to. And clearly, 9th Avenue, the east side of 9th Avenue, is not part of Fast Tracks. You know, if we had, the staff could have typed in the Kensington Neighborhood Revitalization Plan because it really falls into that. Having a sidewalk along that area of Kensington Park, sidewalks and pedestrian improvements were a part of that neighborhood revitalization plan that was presented and accepted by council. So I just want to make sure that our CIP accurately reflects the other related CIP projects.
Okay. Councilmember Witt?
And I would just say, we have no idea where Fast Tracks is eventually going to end up. So, yes, you could be right, and we'll have to fix it. But I don't feel like fixing it on the fly. So, let's deal with it later.
Okay, I guess let's vote. Okay, it passes 7-0. Okay, we're general business. Do you want to take a 10-minute break now?
We've been here a while.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess.
We've been here since 5:30.
All we need to do is do this.
order? Oh. All right. Frank will be right back. So let's continue the meeting.
Mayor Coombs, the next item on your agenda is Longmont Times Call Archive discussion, and Wes Jessup will make that presentation.
I'm Mayor Coombs and council members. I'm here representing the museum, and we are seeking direction about an offer that was made to the museum in 2012. Last year, the Times Call and its parent company, Prairie Mountain, approached city staff, museum staff, about the possibility of their archive coming to the Longmont Museum. This includes materials going back to the early 1900s, clipping files, bound volumes, microfilms, photographs. Prairie Mountain and the city both agreed this is a very significant archive, and the Longmont Museum is the right place for the long-term preservation of this archive. The museum could monitor and control access to the archive so the public would have access to it while ensuring that it is housed and cared for at a museum quality level. The problem with this, however, is that Prairie Mountain is offering the archive to us on a permanent loan status. This means that we would not own the archive. It could be taken back at any time. While the museum feels this is an incredibly important opportunity and the archive would really kind of transform our existing archive, we're like most other museums. We don't accept permanent loans. The term permanent loan is even kind of a little bit of an oxymoron. It doesn't belong to us. It's not necessarily permanent. At any time, the lender can take back the object or the items that are being loaned. And this is part of the reason why our collection policy states the museum will not accept loans indefinitely. So while other museums in the past have offered or allowed permanent loans in at other places, it's pretty infrequent now. In museum practice, it's almost never happens anymore. There's too many situations that arise when a permanent loan was accepted years ago by an entity or an individual, and the museum expends resources to accept it and to maintain it and to conserve it, but then decades later, maybe it's pulled back. So accepting a permanent loan now generally means there will be problems in the future and for future administrations of the museum. Additionally, the cost of accepting this museum, the sort of upfront costs of taking this collection right now, would be around $31,000. And those are expenses that involve staffing and shelving and other preservation kinds of costs. The Museum Advisory Board discussed this in March, and they voted not to accept this gift on the permanent loan conditions. So we feel like the situation warrants council awareness and input and direction. We understand the seriousness of the possibility if it does not come to the museum, and that it's not accessible in Longmont. That's a possibility, and we want to acknowledge that. At the same time, we want to work within a solid policy framework. We want to do the right thing, and we don't want to make decisions now that we'll regret later. So I'm open for any questions on this.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. Wes, is this a decision that has to be made tonight? Is there any still possible negotiations, or is this kind of like negotiations with other topics that we had and have had in the last several months? Is this the drop dead date?
Yeah, I think what we want to do is bring it to your attention, and there's always a possibility that Prairie Mountain could go elsewhere with this archive, and so we need to all be aware of that.
Sure.
That's why I want to bring it up. I don't think a decision is necessarily required for tonight, but I think what's important is that we're getting it out there and we're sharing it with all of you.
Because I don't want to change museum policy. I mean, I talked to you this afternoon. I talked to Dean Lehman's in the audience as well, and I called him. The idea that I would like to float is that Prairie Mountain would give the archive to the city, and if for some reason, and from my conversations with Dean, I did get your secondary email, Dean, and I'm still hopeful that this isn't a yes or no decision. The Prairie Mountain would give their archive, the whole collection, to the city museum. That at any time, if the city were to not fund the museum or what have you, that the collection would stay in whole, in its entirety. If for some reason a rogue museum director, not you or maybe someone else down the line, would decide to try to parcel the collection, a piece of the collection off, or try to sell it or what have you, it would revert back to the owner of the Longmont Times Call.
Right.
We would follow all copyrights of the United States. I mean, to allay their fears. I mean, something along those lines.
So if something went wrong, we would give it back to them.
Right, free of charge. If somehow it came across that the museum director at the Longmont Museum was selling the 1920 bound copies of the Longmont Times Call to Joe Smith, that it came to the owner of the Times Call's attention, or whomever, that it would automatically revert within a very short period of time. Ownership would revert back to the owner of the Times Call.
So we have proposed, Mayor Coombs and council members, we have proposed that to Prairie Mountain. So
I think that's of course, access still for the reporters, editors of the Times Call, Prairie Mountain,
right,
and of course the public, because then it's in our possession. I'm looking for the way we have the council options. The 1 and 2 is yes or no, and then provide other direction. I'm trying to find something that'll try to win-win for everyone. And Harold looks like he's got his finger on the button, so you have something to say?
Well, I think as I've discussed this issue with staff, I think one of the things that we want to be cognizant of in this discussion is the fact that we don't want to create a situation where folks want to provide us with items on a permanent loan basis, in a permanent loan, from a permanent loan standpoint on a regular basis, and we're put into this discussion. Now, at the same time, I think we also realize the historic significance of the archive, and trying to bring balance to the discussion. So I think the key point is as we look at this, that is one option. Another option, based on some discussions that I've heard, is that if council decides to accept this collection, that in the motion, I think we reference the historical significance of this as part of that when we look at it, so we don't get in this position again with other items. And then I think it's also really understanding what the perspective is and why the focus on the permanent loan.
Sure.
Is, can we wordsmith it a little differently and accomplish the same thing?
Oh, and I get this historical significance. I would not, as I told Dean earlier, I would not want to see this outside the city of Longmont. But would I have access to it if it was left the city? Of course I would. But I think it's historically significant to the city of Longmont. Are they willing to help us with the $31,000 of the one-time cost? Has that been broached?
Mayor Coombs and council members, it has been broached, and no, they're not interested in paying.
I'm looking at it as another thing of, I don't like paying for something if I don't own it or be a partner with it. Yes, we will get it, but it's not really ours. What if Prairie Mountain sells to Gannett? Are they just going to pull it back from us after we've spent money on this? So those are my questions. I would prefer that we still negotiate and try to make this happen. So That's what I think.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. I also wrote down a couple of additional ideas that maybe we have everything but the last 30 years, as the last 30 years of the archive could be on the permanent loan and the rest of it we could own, do some kind of compromise. The other thing I'm frankly concerned about is what's our liability? I mean, if something would happen in the storage facility where this was stored, happened to have a fire, or for insurance purposes, if the deterioration, we would be responsible for any deterioration of the items over time. And, you know, old newspaper in print is highly fragile. If we would then be the caretaker, the custodian, in case something hadn't been properly stored in the past, then we become the responsible party to make sure that it at least is maintained in the current state, which if we have some of these archives for 20 years and they want them back, they'll almost say, well, you know, you owe us money because they're not well taken care of. But I'd like to know what our liability risk is and the insurance. What's the current value of this archive?
Mayor Coombs and council members, the current value is being stated by Prairie Mountain as $1 million. And my understanding is that we would include that in our coverage of the museum collection with everything else that we have.
So this will cost us ongoing space, which I understand we have very limited amount of archive space now, and a lot of our archive is sitting in a warehouse. And, you know, future archive space would have to be provided to accommodate this collection that could be taken back at any time. You know, it's a great historical body of work. However, it's not like someone donated a Picasso to us on a permanent loan, and we can monetize the loan to pay for some of the costs in storing it and the additional insurance and other things. Plus, it would take additional staff time to access this resource, which again is an additional cost that is unknown. So, you know, unless somebody's willing to help us out with the cost, I don't see how changing the acquisition policy of the museum for this one-time archive, it doesn't, to me, meet the threshold. You know, if it was the original something other from one of the founding fathers of Longmont, that would be one thing. I mean, and I know there are quite a few of these newspaper items and microfilms already in the possession of the city, so it would somehow fill in the gaps. I understand there are gaps, but I don't want to second guess the work that was done by the museum board in their recommendation, because I had at one time served on the museum board, and I know how carefully the citizens who sit on that board consider acquisitions too. So unless there's some funding stream with this, I would continue negotiations, but without some kind of reliable funding stream, I'm not inclined to just accept it at this point.
If I can, to touch on the insurance discussion, that would fall under a self-insurance fund, and so that if something were to happen, that would have to be paid for out of the fund. Staff could look at taking out a separate policy on it, but then you would have an ongoing insurance cost that you would have to manage in that process.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I sit on the liaison for the museum board, and I've been privy to some of the discussions. And my understanding is that, and I agree with the recommendation of the museum board, that we should not waver from our current policy of accepting anything on a permanent loan basis. And my understanding is that Wes is here tonight because it's an important decision, important enough that they didn't want to make a decision and then just have us at some point go, why didn't you bring that to us? My opinion is that, first of all, it's not our decision. It's not our paper. We don't own it. We don't own the archives. We can negotiate. We can beg, borrow. Can't steal. But I mean, I've witnessed the attempts of the museum staff to try to acquire some type of ownership and solution. But at the end of the day, it's not ours. And paying to house it is, yeah, I'd love to have it, but there's a lot of things I want. But I just think it would be a poor choice, waste of money. And if they're willing to change their mind and give it to us, yeah, then we could revisit the discussion. But paying to house something that they're already going to be housing and paying for, I just don't think it's a good idea. They're not going to throw it away. They're just going to store it, and we can't get it. And in the future, if they want to throw it away, I mean, who knows what the future holds. But right now, I'm just not interested in picking up the tab.
Councilmember Witt?
Thank you, Mayor. When I was reading this, it sounded as if, Prairie Mountain is out of space and they want to shift some things around. Kind of reminded me of my parents taking care of a dog that wasn't theirs. And so they got to have the dog, but they also had to feed the dog. And when the dog got sick, you had to take care of the dog. And the owners didn't really, they said, if you want to, give it medicine, that would be great. So this reminded me of a golden retriever that is really awesome, but what are we going to do? So I thought maybe we could lease space, then they could still own it, but it would be in our facility, but it wouldn't be for free. I don't know. Then they could still own it, and we would still be upholding our policy of no permanent loan. So just an idea. But do we want to take care of this golden retriever for decades is kind of the question.
Councilmember Samori?
Okay. I guess what I didn't see, or maybe I overlooked, are there any clear reasons that were given by the donor as to why they would want to retain ownership?
Not to me, Mayor Coombs and council members. Not to me. I believe there was a conversation at one point that it was important that the value of the collection remain on their books. So that perhaps could have been a reason. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm not an accountant, but Karen, would you like to jump in? Karen's also been working on this.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and Karen Roney is also not an accountant, but certainly, my understanding, because it is an asset for that existing corporation for Prairie Mountain, and so they really want to retain that asset on their books. And we didn't go into the detail about all the whys and wherefores, but I think that was the primary reason for this as a permanent loan and not a donation, because we did talk a little bit about, and you might have read in the Denver Post that not long ago, that the Scripps Corporation donated the Rocky Mountain News archives to the city and county of Denver. And the scenario there was that obviously the Rocky Mountain News is defunct, no longer. It's not a viable corporation, and that was the difference that the person we've been negotiating with talked about, the difference between the Rocky Mountain News donation and this being a permanent loan. So we probably, in hindsight and listening to the conversation, we did not outline in the communication all the various negotiating points that we have gotten through. So we've been talking about this for a good year and a year and a half, trying to look at the various options, and we really have. It's really this. Those are great ideas, and if Prairie Mountain is really not interested in providing the city with some funding, because we talked about renting space or giving us some money, we really tried to go through a variety of those options, because they're great options, and. But it's really this permanent loan, scenario. So staff can continue with our negotiations, but we might still be back at this same place. And I think, as someone had mentioned, is that we just thought that council probably didn't want staff to say, oh, never mind, do whatever you want with that collection. And we just felt like that was not our call to make without council being informed of the scenario.
Okay. Well, I can appreciate the paper value, no pun intended. Okay, it was intended. Of the archives. Yeah. However, if they were going to try to sell the asset, I don't know that they would get necessarily $1 million for it. The other issues as far as insurance, et cetera, I'm assuming, possibly wrongly, that they're currently insured under the papers policy. And I see no reason why they couldn't continue to provide that same coverage, just at a different location.
Yeah, I believe that, say it again. No, they did not say that they would insure it. That would be something that we would be covering. I know you're proposing they could pay.
Yeah, that would be part of the negotiation. I mean, if they still own it, and they ought to be responsible for it, they're insuring it right now, there would be no reason for them not to continue to insure it. Just because you loan your car to somebody else to drive for a while, you still have to have insurance. If the car is in your name, you can put the other driver on as a policy holder as well.
Right.
So we could negotiate that with them.
Yeah.
I guess, to me, it's still not clear as to what their sticking point is to want to maintain ownership. I mean, what are the reasons? I mean, there could be valid reasons, and maybe we can work around them. But until those reasons are spelled out to us and are clear, I don't know how we could really say yay or nay.
Right. I think that's what Karen was saying, though. That was the reason that was explained to her. Was that it was. So we've been circling around all of these things for over a year, really. And
I think if I can jump in, I think the answer we have is really the book value and the fact that it's on their financials. What we don't know is what kind of impact that would have to their financials and what that means to their overall bottom line, because obviously they're going to have to, if they were to donate it to the city, they would have to take that off their financials. And in some cases, there are tax advantages, but then it depends on really the condition, their financial condition and their stance. And I don't think that's been communicated to us. We just know that it is on their books, and that's why they want to do the permanent loan.
Well, if we've been talking for a year, I would say it's worth trying to continue to talk and try to get to the meat of the matter as to why. I mean, what's the key reason?
I'm going to weigh in here. I kind of agree with Brian. I think for tonight, I'd follow the museum policy and not to accept the collection on a permanent basis at this point, but continue ongoing negotiations to see if they're, in the future. So I wouldn't shut down talks, but I mean, I think tonight we can make that recommendation. At least that's the way I'm leaning. Councilmember Witt.
Well, I was going to actually say, I think we need to restate our policy, which is that we don't accept permanent loans. Thank you very much. And if anything changes, come back to us, and we'd be glad to talk to you. So I'm going to make that in form of a motion that we support the museum board's recommendation.
Okay. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I thought maybe I'd weigh in. I think that this is a significant piece of work that should be in our museum. It shouldn't be anywhere else. However, if we cannot accept it as a permanent loan, I don't know. I don't see that there could ever be another body of work that would be similar to this. So I'm not sure I would make that hard and fast rule. But I also understand that if we don't own it, we shouldn't have to insure it. And perhaps if we don't own it, there should be some lease type payment for it. So I won't vote to hold up the hard, fast rule, because I think this is an exception to the rule because of the breadth of work that it includes. So that's how I feel about that.
Gabe is asking for clarification on the motion, so could you read it back?
Councilmember Witt voted to support the museum policy's recommendation, and Councilmember Levison seconded that.
Okay. Councilmember Santos.
I would still, I agree with the museum policy. I still would like to continue negotiating. It took 4 years for the Rocky Mountain News, the scripts in the Rocky Mountain News. I still think we've only been talking a year. I'd still like to have some sort of negotiation. So if that would be appropriate, can I make a friendly amendment to continue negotiation? Would that be okay with the second?
Yep.
Councilmember Bagley.
I was going to do that.
Oh, sorry, Councilman.
That's all I wanted to say. That's what I was going to do. So, yeah. Good job, Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilmember Samori.
Okay, so if we say no, we're not going to accept it, will they still be willing to sit down and negotiate with us?
Why not?
I'm just throwing out the question.
Yeah. Ball's in their court.
Well, I'd like to say something, Mayor Coombs and council members. I mean, it took 4 years for the Denver Public Library, which does not accept, by the way, permanent loans, to get the Rocky Mountain News. So I do see it as a longer process, and I appreciate you pointing that out.
Okay, we've got a motion. It's been accepted. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 5-2 with Councilmember Finley and Councilmember Samori dissenting.
Thanks.
Mayor Coombs, the next item is the continuation of the appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision on the Grandview Meadows preliminary PUD development, plan amendment, and variances to the riparian setback and residential design standards. And I believe Eugene May has some comments on the procedural aspect of this.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. As you remember, this is a continuation of appeal from April 9th. I think at that time, the appellant and applicant had an opportunity to present the bulk of their cases, and this is just a hearing to receive additional evidence and argument. Therefore, I would recommend making a modification of the original appeal procedures. I believe Don Burchett would introduce the item. The applicant would present the additional evidence and argument. The appellant would have their opportunity. At this point, I think looking at the letter submitted by the applicant, I think 10 minutes would be adequate for that presentation. I know there are some people that signed up for a public hearing, members of the neighborhood or other citizens. I think it'd be prudent to allow them to have an opportunity to voice their opinions, perhaps limiting their testimony to 3 minutes apiece, as is sort of our standard for public invited to be heard, and then allowing staff, the applicant, and the appellant opportunity to rebut, but limiting that to 5 minutes.
Councilmember Bagley.
Point of order, procedure, I don't know. My question is, but my understanding is that we just wanted to hear, as it says, architectural diversity. That's all we're dealing with tonight, correct? The proposed changes to the architecture. That was my understanding. I don't want to get into additional arguments like we did last time. That's not what we're doing here.
That could be.
That is my, I don't know if it's a motion or whatever. All I want to hear tonight, I move that we limit tonight's issue to the changes in architectural diversity and address that issue, and not riparian setbacks or any of the other issues listed in the appellant's brief.
Okay, we got a Councilmember Levison.
However, part of the argument the applicant makes in the reconfiguration of the buildings is also to say that this additional change would mitigate some of the other issues at hand. So, I think we need to cover the whole spectrum of things, just to be to see if there are any changes that came about from the last hearing, and this is really a continuation of the appeal hearing. So I think it's not only fair, but I think it will set the tone that the applicant already had brought in this issue as a part of the incentive to look at the new configuration he's brought forward. So I think that since he's using that part as part of his argument, then he's already brought it into the into play here. So I think that we should cover everything.
I guess I kind of agree with Sarah on this. I think everything's back open as long as we eliminate. We have a 10-minute presentation by the applicant, a 10-minute presentation by the appellant, and then we'll open it up for 3 people signed up for public invited to be heard, 3 minutes, and then we can have the rebuttal by both the appellant and the applicant. So we've invested that much time. I think we should complete the process. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no problem with it. With what Councilmember Levison proposed, it's 10 minutes. If there are issues that the appellant has with the new configuration, everyone gets 10 minutes. 3 minutes per, as the mayor said, and I would agree with that as well, Mayor. 3 minutes, public invited to be heard, 5 minutes rebuttal. So it's kind of a new process, but if there's issues, fine. But last time I think things got drug out a little, way too long. So I'm fine. I'm fine with how the process has been recommended. So,
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I don't have a problem technically, but if this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, we voted last week. Those other issues are not at issue. So I'll sit here for 10 minutes, but they are not at issue. So, I mean, we're only here to vote on architectural diversity. We have voted.
Wow. No, okay. We do have, and it was seconded, so I guess we need to vote on the motion. Okay, let's vote. Okay, the motion carries 4-3 with Councilmember Levison, Santos, and myself dissenting. Okay. Go ahead.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Don Burchett, Senior Planner with the Economic Development Department. As Eugene already explained tonight, again, you're reopening the hearing for the appeal of the decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the Grandview Meadows Apartments project. And as just a quick update, you did make a number of motions at the last meeting, but the only one that actually passed was the one to bring back the additional information from the applicant that was talked about for the architectural for tonight. So no other motions passed approving or denying any of the other requests. So we would ask that you follow City Attorney Eugene May's recommendation on the process. And with that, I'm going to sit down and answer questions later. Thank you.
Mayor Coombs, I do have a timer that
Okay.
I'll set for each one of these.
Okay, so first off, the applicant will present first.
Good evening. My name is Larry Owen, and I am the project engineer for this project. And I will strictly adhere to my 10 minutes, try to be less than that. We appreciate you hearing us again. If you'll recall, at the public hearing 2 weeks ago on April 9th, there was a question as to the compliance of the proposed buildings for this filing 3 replat A of Grandview Meadows as to whether or not they complied with the code requirements for architectural diversity. In response to that challenge, there was a verbal offer made to substitute 2 14-unit buildings for 2 of the previously proposed 16-unit buildings out of the total of 5. Excuse me, that proposal was formalized in a letter that was submitted to council dated April 17th. We understand the intent of Code Section 15.05.110I requiring architectural diversity, and we understand also staff's position that they are required or mandated to consider this application as if it were a new application, given that it is an amendment or a request for an amendment to the previously approved PDP. The reality, however, is that this is not a new project. This is a project that has been ongoing for more than 12 years. And really the nature of and the design of the development was established more than 12 years ago, well prior to the code revisions. And in point of fact, even this portion of the site, this final phase, has been before the city in various iterations since 2002. So strictly speaking, I agree. I understand that this application postdates the code amendments, but everything that we've done leading up to this has been based on the conditions that were in place in 2002 when we initiated this particular part of the project. Having said that, we understand and we endorse the city's and the neighbors' desire for architectural diversity, but there are certain practical limitations that come into play as we get up in building size. Architectural diversity is easy to achieve in custom home developments, even in production home developments. It's reasonable to flip a floor plan, to add a garage bay or a half bay, to change the geometry of an entry cover, and certainly to change exterior materials. These opportunities are also available to some extent in multifamily units where the buildings are smaller, duplexes, fourplexes, that kind of thing. But as we get to larger buildings, the opportunities for comparable flexibility and diversity are much more limited. And this is a site that is zoned for high-density residential development. The limitations that we are experiencing, we've made efforts to mitigate, and I'd like you to, we're asking that you would consider this application and this presentation tonight in the context of a larger building. We have 2- and 3-story buildings on the site. In this particular phase, there will be all 2-story buildings, but they are certainly much larger footprints than a single-family house or a duplex or even a fourplex. In addition to that, there are practical design and construction aspects to multifamily residential that cannot be easily ignored. These units need to be stacked to a certain degree in order to make the project functional structurally. We have situations such as connecting halls and ADA access requirements and what have you that don't allow us to step the floor elevations throughout the building as you might be able to do in a smaller building. In light of the limitations that are inherent in the design and construction of high-density residential, I submit that this applicant has made credible efforts to address the Longmont Code. The final phase of this development was planned with the expectation of being able to develop 80 apartment units in the remaining portion of the site. And all indications that we had received up to the appeal that came forward to the P&Z approval was that those expectations were being confirmed. However, in light of what we heard 2 weeks ago, we have looked at other opportunities to provide some diversity in the architecture. And the the offer that we made at that time was to substitute 2 14-unit buildings for 15-unit buildings. We've submitted information to the council that explains that. It clarifies our verbal proposal and provides a little bit more specific information. The overall dimensions of the 14-unit building are quite similar to that of the 16-unit building, but there are significant and numerous detailed variations between the two buildings. And I guess at this time what I'd like to do is step aside and allow Al Hauser, who is the project architect, to come in and explain some of those variations in detail to you. He will do a better job than I will, and then I'll come back and just close. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Al Hauser, Hauser Architects, 3780 East 15th Street, Loveland, Colorado. We've worked with Tim Development for a number of years on their Colorado and Nebraska projects, and we've addressed the concerns that have come up in the last 2 weeks with this project in the form of some elevation materials that have been submitted. The multifamily section of the code really does limit itself to just paragraph I, and we feel we have addressed those concerns with the materials we've given you. We have masonry materials consisting of brick and cultured stone that we can vary between the buildings in both pattern and color. The roof lines have also been varied on the buildings between hips and gables and various accent features that change from building to building. The shape of the openings in the elements that deal with the entry, covered entry elements and the deck elements, we've got some variation there between a square opening and an archtop opening on those. So we have several areas where we address the concerns in paragraph I that are asked for. In addition to that, in bringing in the 14-unit building in lieu of 2 of the other 16-unit buildings, we can further vary the roof line a little bit in a number of ways. We've explored a couple of those. We'd like to continue to explore those with staff, but we've got the opportunity for even further variation in the building elements by bringing in that 14-unit building in lieu of another repetitive 16-unit building. I can answer specific questions or let Larry finish up with his presentation. I'd be happy to address any of those concerns in more detail if you feel you need it.
Excuse me. So just in conclusion, I feel that the buildings throughout the development provide a significant variety of existing or external architecture. We have 3-story 24-unit buildings. We have 2-story 16-unit buildings. We have 2-story 14-unit buildings, and we're proposing a similar mix, albeit without the 3-story buildings in this last phase. We believe that this proposal will expand upon the existing architectural diversity while still maintaining the identity of Grandview Meadows. These buildings will still fit within the same theme, architectural theme, as the rest of the project, and we feel that's important. We don't want, and I don't think that the city would want a random building just sticking out like a sore thumb in the corner of this site. It's important to the developers, it's important to the people that live there to know that this is Grandview Meadows and it's not the next door neighbor or the 2 neighbors over kind of thing. We, as Al said, in the couple of weeks since April 9th, we have developed a number of variations on the architectural proposal that you saw previously. We are quite prepared to carry on with that, but recognizing, as I'm sure you do, that you have a busy schedule, and I think really it's not appropriate for you to be choosing paint colors. We would like to suggest that we carry on with staff.
Right. Okay, well, your time's up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. So next, sure. Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you. Just, Mr. Chet, my question is the same question I asked before. Based on what we just heard, does city staff think that they have met the architectural diversity requirements of the code? What is your suggestion or input?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Bagley, I did include on the cover of the council communication the standards. I think there was a little bit of a perception that we didn't really have anything to follow when I used my example. So we wanted to make sure that was clear. There are specific standards. When I look at the drawings that were presented tonight, there are some of the items that are listed in that criteria that are met by these proposed changes to the plan, but I don't see as far as I can tell from the information submitted, the facade changes that are also required. To me, this looks like the same building with some windows moved around and a unit taken out and a door shifted over. That's my take on it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mark McGarry, 4133 Hawthorne Place. Appreciate the opportunity. I want to stay on point here. I don't believe that the changes that we're seeing rise to the level that we'd all hope that they would in terms of an improvement in quality, an improvement in the aesthetics, and assuring that there's no impact on the neighbors. And I think you'll find that all of those things are requirements in terms of the code in granting the variance. With that said, and really to the developer's point, I think staff probably has a better idea than maybe what I do. I'm not an architect. What I do know that I'm concerned about is my home values, the open space that we're all trying to enjoy there, and trying to maintain the aesthetics of that neighborhood. We've been through all of that. It seems to me that a solution from my perspective that would certainly would address most of these concerns would be to provide enhanced landscape screening and the berming around the entire perimeter, southern property line and the southeast property line. It seemed to me that's an easy fix. The enhanced landscaping that the developers offered around half of that property line and that berming will certainly help. It seemed to me it would help around the entire length of that property line that's in question. You know, I'm not interested in punishing the developer. I'm interested in maintaining my property rights. I'm interested in maintaining the public value that we've already all invested in terms of this open space. That screening will go a long way to do that, and I think satisfy most of the concerns that we've got as neighbors to this property. So I appreciate you thinking about that, but if we can't find some other way to address it, it seems to me that what we're seeing from the developer does not meet the conditions that they've got to meet. Thanks.
Okay, so we've got some other presenters that have signed up. Yeah, public invited to be heard on this issue. This is first up is Jerry Grip, G-R-I-E-P. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and council members. I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Jerry Greep. I live at 4140 Hawthorne Place. And I agree with Mr. McGarry. I still don't think that the developer has provided enough architectural diversity. And I'd like to show a couple of pictures to kind of illustrate that, if I could. First of all, as an overview, I'm sorry, the developer really didn't try to negotiate or work with the community to try to alleviate this. I think if they would have, we wouldn't be here or 2 weeks ago and again tonight. The changes that they did were only at the 11th hour under duress when they thought they were going to lose their project. So I took pictures today of 14-unit buildings and 16-unit buildings, and I just want to show that there really isn't that much difference, and changing a 16-unit building to a 14-unit building is not going to make a difference. There's a 14-unit, there's a 16-unit, and there's another 14-unit. So if you go back and forth between those two, they're almost identical. So I don't think changing the building to 14 units, it was that helpful. One thing I'd like, let's see, then I also took some pictures, and the arrow is pointing at the building that's under construction in the next few slides. This is the last of the existing construction as viewed from across the creek, and this doesn't jive with what the developer showed a few weeks ago of a simulation. Oops. If you look on the right-hand side of that picture, you see the architectural diversity of the rest of Grandview Meadows down the line there. This is the red line in this picture is the parking lot level, and this is as viewed from the southeast of the project. And this is what I consider a good working relationship with the neighborhood. When this building, or when this development, this is a development adjacent or immediately to the east, it's Clover Basin. They bermed around the entire south side, which blocks their parking lot and obscures the view. It doesn't make the buildings look quite so big. So, we have this or that. I'd just like to see the council ask them to berm around the entire south side and southeast side. They're going to probably say that. I'm sorry.
You're 3 minutes for that. Sorry. Mark Lutkin.
Hello, my name is Mark Lugin. I'm at 4109 Hawthorne Place. I echo some of the comments of Jerry and Mark with a slightly different perspective. I don't live within the 700-foot or 750-foot radius that planning sent out to property owners for comment, but I live within the neighborhood that Mark and Jerry live in as well. And I'm a frequent user of the creek, the open space that's along there. And as the president of our homeowners association, I've received a number of comments from our neighbors that all use that open space as well. So with respect to the architectural diversity, I think the fundamental issue is the size of the buildings and not being screened along that open space. The developer has definitely taken some steps forward to reduce the impact of the visual impact on the open space, but the berming that they're proposing, I think, is a definite plus. As Mark suggested, extending it along the entire south perimeter would be beneficial. The 14-unit buildings that they're proposing are similar footprint, as Jerry pointed out, as shown. They're very similar in design and structure. What would really be a benefit from a solution standpoint is to take the southwestern building that they're proposing and make it a one-story building. They could take the other two buildings back to 16, and that's not really the issue. It's set back. If it's bermed, that's not the issue. To me, it's the one building that's closest to the creek. It's going to have the most prominent obstruction to the views and along the creek there. So again, my suggestion for solution to the architectural diversity is make one building one single-story building and make sure that the berming is across there to screen the other buildings. And that would, so, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak on this at this point? Okay, I guess according to this process, the appellant may rebut additional evidence. Applicant. Yeah, okay, so we'll do, we reverse it. So applicant can rebut additional evidence at this point? And then you'll have 5 minutes for this.
Okay. I guess what I'm hearing is that the appellant and the homeowners' representatives, the neighbors, would like to see some additional screening, some additional berming, and potentially a reduction in the size or the massing of the more southwestern building. We can do that. The berming along the entire length is a little more difficult because there's already a detention basin there, and the geometry of that is pretty much fixed. I'm not sure there's space there. We can add screening to the top of that berm and extend that landscape screening along there. We can work to change the architecture some more, particularly on that southwestern building. I guess what I would like to suggest at this time, as I was doing it, as I wrapped up last time, was to suggest or request that we be allowed to do that with staff, give staff the discretion to determine if we have achieved the intent and the detail of the code requirements, and we will do that. I think that we can address, and we can involve the neighborhood, the HOA in that process as well. But it's my understanding from conversations that I've heard, discussion, that really the riparian setback issue is not an issue, and the overall approval of the amendment to the PDP is not an issue, provided that we can meet the architectural condition, and that's what we would request, that we be allowed to work with staff at your direction to achieve those requirements. Thank you. Okay.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess addressing the applicant, on one hand, speaking one of seven, I'm totally pro-developer. I want to see this go in. My concern is, I thought that what you just said, I thought that's what we were doing tonight, and so my understanding was that you'd be getting together with staff and making sure that what you just said was to happen tonight. And so I want this to go forward, but as I said last time, I don't like driving around the city and seeing cookie cutter developments. And so I think that's why the code exists as it exists. And I would encourage you to work with city staff to make sure that the next time you come back, they say, yeah, I think they've met the code requirements. I think that we do see architectural diversity. And so I'm not willing to necessarily encourage us to kill it. I'm willing to give you another chance, I guess, but I don't want to keep having to come back. So, I mean, I'd encourage you, and I'd encourage us to just say, get together with Mr. Burchett and the rest of city staff that works with him in order to make darn sure you're meeting those architectural diversity requirements, satisfy that burning requirement, you're good to go. I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay. The appellant gets 5 minutes to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would ask that any motion that you make tonight, please include the requirement that the berming and the enhanced landscaping extend not only along the south property line, but the southeast corner as well. That's a part of the very open portion of this open space area that we're trying to maintain. I would also defer to staff in terms of the architectural standards and whether that condition has been met. I think they have a very good handle on that, better than I do. But I would strongly urge you to do that and support what the neighbors are looking for there in terms of the motion specifically. I think you can tell certainly from my perspective, while the developer is improving, it's been difficult to get them to come to the table. And we're finally there, and I appreciate your patience with us in getting them to that process. I just want to be sure we get over the finish line with something that works for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Staff can go ahead and.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Don Burchett again. Just two things. One, I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that staff identified their need for the architectural variance during our first review of this project back in 8/10 of 12. So we made this evident to them that we did not agree with the architecture back in the very first review. With that said, there is an option that council could consider, and it is kind of spelled out in your original council com. You could look to modify the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You could uphold any number of the 3 items that there are to consider. So you have the preliminary development plan, that is one item. You have the architectural variance, which is a second item, and then you have the setback variance for the riparian setback. So you have 3 items tonight. And again, Planning Commission approved all 3 of those. If you wanted to, you could modify or deny one of the requests, but put conditions on the approval of the PUD that those additional things that you think are warranted would be conditions of approval of the PUD, which could entail meeting the architectural requirements of the code, additional berming, if you could give us some kind of some parameters there that we make sure we get what you think is necessary, and then additional plantings or screenings. Those could be conditions that you could put on a modified PZR, which would then let this kind of go if you're okay with that. If you want it to come back, then we will work with the applicant and bring it back when it's ready. I don't know. That would be up to you, but that would be my suggestion for you to think about.
Councilmember Larson.
So I've been listening pretty carefully to, the different statements that people have been making this evening on this issue. And, one thing that I don't see as consistent when the applicant talks about the difficulty with larger buildings having less flexibility and diversity in design, there are multi-story buildings all over the country. And if you look at large cities, Denver, New York, there are significant differences in design in buildings, all buildings of 5 stories, 10 stories, 20 stories, skyscrapers. And so the argument that you can't do a multifamily building with diversity because you have to have ADA accessibility and hallways and certain other things that are inherent to multifamily design doesn't really hold water when we see that kind of diversity throughout the country in multifamily buildings, even across historical time frames, from brownstones and 2-family, multifamily buildings. Different kinds of design has always been almost a standard. The other thing that I find is that there's not a whole lot of difference between the black and white drawings that we see and if you were going to be stepping across the street, or if you could imagine the long view having just a slight different color of brick or a little bit of a gable, from a distance doesn't show any diversity. I think that one of the public speakers who gave us this shot of Clover Basin Village Apartments, if you can look at that, you can clearly see architectural diversity between these buildings. This almost makes the case for what staff is saying, that you have to have some kind of a different aesthetic that someone who's not familiar with architecture can say, oh yeah, that really looks different. And if you look at what the the applicant gave us, it doesn't look that significantly different. The window openings are not varied between the buildings. There might be a little bit of a piece of attached design, but it's nothing that would have been remarkable enough that had you been given an assignment to compare and contrast these buildings, you wouldn't have had much to write about for your school assignment. And I think that what the this section of the code talks about is a quality of architectural design, including variations, and that means actually having variations in the difference in the design of the dwellings. And the difference between the 14 unit and 16 units that was presented to us in the documentation, if you look at what the past history has been, there's, virtually nothing different between those 16 and 14 unit buildings. So having a 14 unit building substituting for a 16 unit building here is not that exciting a design change. And I think that was done to try to mitigate the concern of the neighbors around having the encroachment of the easement there. I would also agree that we need to look at the additional landscaping and berming to see if we can have a better quality product from the view that most people are going to have of these buildings, which is from the open space. I'll let everybody else weigh in, but I don't want to waste a lot of people's time having this come back in 2 weeks and maybe 4 weeks. I agree with Councilmember Bagley that, we thought there would be more progress than this that we would see. But we didn't give you very much time to make progress, frankly. Having maybe another couple of weeks before it came back to us might have made the difference.
Councilmember Shamari.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Mr. Owens? Help me understand the design of these buildings. What I've heard in the past is that these are assembled easily on the ground. So are the structures prefabricated?
Components of the building are prefabricated on site, but on the ground, as opposed to being what's referred to as stick built. So instead of putting up 1 2x4 at a time in the joist, there are panels that are constructed and then moved into position and put in place.
Does that restrict the redesign or reconfiguration of the buildings in any way?
Strictly speaking, no. However, these buildings are, some of the efficiencies in the building are the fact that they're repetitive. So you can build a number of the same components or same modules efficiently instead of, as you would do in a custom home, building every element of it independently or uniquely.
So based on what you've heard tonight and a couple of weeks ago, how would you redesign potentially to make them more architecturally diverse?
One of the things that we could do is to take, for example, that southwestern building and make it either a one-story building or maybe one story on one end and sort of step down as you go. Basically what we'd be doing is eliminating a portion of the building and dropping that roof structure down, so you get a stepped roof effect in it. In this particular case, we're down to the last phase of the site. We are dealing with 3 acres out of initially a total of about 40 acres. The layout of the site, not just this phase, but phases 1, 2, and 3 ahead of it, the infrastructure that serves those phases has all been in place, or at least established and now constructed for some time. There are buildings that are being constructed right now that you saw pictures of tonight that are part of filing 3. But we're down to the last corner. And so it's not as easy to make global changes now as it would have been if we had been working under these set of conditions for the last 15 years, which is when this project started. We can make some changes in the buildings, but the space, the footprint that those buildings would sit in is pretty much defined.
Okay. I guess what I'm hearing is that the changes that you've proposed and the changes that you may propose are not going to change the structures drastically enough to be architecturally diverse, because all we're modifying are the facades and the materials that are used on the facades and possibly the roof line, right?
That's correct. Essentially, we have a footprint that we can place a building in. We would like to develop as many units as we can in there. We set out with the objective of constructing 80 dwelling units in here. If we, in order to meet the architectural diversity standards, need to eliminate some of those dwelling units in order to lower a roof line and then create a stepped effect, or take a whole floor off, for example. Those things can be done, but they impact the project certainly from an economic perspective. I don't think that it will change. There are limitations on what we can do to the architecture, and given that the architecture is somewhat subjective, whether a particular style of architecture is appealing to me or to you or to someone else is our personal preference. We have tried to make these more diverse than the previous buildings that are in the development by changing the roof lines. We can put on a hip roof, a gable roof, a hybrid hip and gable. We can do a hip or gable roof with extensions. We can do shed roofs over the doors. We can do things like that. But the footprint and the floor plan of the units inside, there's a symmetry to it, both along the long axis and the short axis. So it's difficult to take a window out of this bedroom and say, we're just going to eliminate that because we don't want it to be the same as the one on the other end of the building. You can't do that, or you end up with a bedroom with no window in it.
What is the average sales price of these units?
Well, they're not for sale. They're rental units.
Rental only?
They're rental units, yes. The developer will continue to own them and manage them.
And is that long term, or is this just temporary, or?
It's, I believe that in the history of their company, they have sold one complex out of all that they've developed. But their practice is to develop them, own them, operate them for the long term.
Okay, and so from a maintenance perspective, long term, how are they maintained? Because one of the concerns is the value of surrounding properties.
Sure.
And if the units are not kept up in good shape, the appearance is deteriorating, the landscaping deteriorating, I can appreciate that the neighbors would be concerned.
Sure.
What is the history and what are your plans to make sure that that doesn't occur?
They have an on-site manager in each one of their complexes that lives on the site in one of the units and is there full-time. They, I think in some cases, they contract out the maintenance, but it's under the supervision of that on-site manager. In other cases, they do the work themselves. They have a very strong vested interest in making sure that these continue to look good and to perform well because they do own them for the long term. They're not in the business of developing them and selling them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I have a couple of questions. This is the third filing, sir?
This is actually, excuse me. This is the fourth phase, but the city has asked us to consider it as replat A of the third filing.
So of the other filings, is it the same developer?
Yes.
And in those other filings, are the buildings, do they look just like the buildings in this filing? Or are they different?
The buildings in this filing aren't finished yet, but in the initial filing, which is the northern part of the site, there are a mix of three-story 24-unit buildings and two-story 16-unit buildings. In the second filing, there's a mix of, they're all two-story buildings in the second filing, but there's a mix of 14 and 16-unit buildings.
But do they look the
And
same
they look very similar, yes.
to the ones that you're proposing?
To the ones we initially proposed. Now, what we're proposing as a result of the feedback we've received is to try to vary the exterior appearance of the buildings yet to be constructed to provide some of that architectural diversity. And to the extent that we can do that through, or what we've proposed so far is to do that through exterior materials, colors, some different treatments at doors and windows, different roof lines. But essentially the buildings that we initially proposed are the same structure, essentially. Although in response to Mr. Summary, we've said that it's possible that we could change the appearance. We probably would not change the footprint of a building all that much because of the constraints that we're into, but we could go ahead and reduce one of the buildings to, we had proposed a 14, but maybe it becomes a 12 unit, or maybe it becomes
You know, what I'm hearing from my fellow council members is they don't care what size the building is, they just want it to look different. So if I were you, I would not propose to make it a smaller footprint, but instead make it different. If you can, if you're able. Is that even a possibility?
I think it is, and what I'm suggesting is that given the subjectivity of it, we can canvass 7 opinions, or we can work with staff and the neighbors to the extent that they want to have input to come to a position where Don Burchett could then come to you and say, they've done it. They've satisfied my interpretation of the diversity standard.
Okay, with that in mind, I think what I would like to do, and I'm certainly amenable to any sort of amendments, but I would move to modify the decision of the Planning and Zoning decision with 2 conditions. One, that there be increased diversity as decided by Don Burchett, and the second, that there be additional berming to screen the parking lots.
Berming and screening?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's the motion that's been made and seconded. I'm going to weigh in here. I kind of agree. I think we've got a good staff, and they're architects. They have the background. They should decide what, because the 7 of us will never totally agree on what's virtually architecturally diverse or not. So I think we should throw the bucket back in our staff's lap and approve the things that we can approve on this. I think we're all satisfied with their riparian setbacks and those other issues. So if we can solve this and get additional berming and screening, I would support that. Councilmember Lodison.
Except I think we're missing one thing that staff member told us, that he has been talking to the developer about what the dynamic of diversity of design is since August of 2012. And is that correct? You said August of 2012.
That was when the first DRC report was issued, yes.
So while it's great to encourage this additional discussion, here we are at this point with planning and zoning having the same recommendation that Mr. Burchett made to us, and then applicant talking to him in this process and still not getting something. So I'm wondering whether or not the charge of having additional communication is going to be the magic bullet at this point, because there's been this ongoing discussion. And I don't think that it would be the responsibility of staff to sit down with the applicant's drawings and mark it up for him as to what would satisfy the requirement. I don't know if that's something that, staff doesn't take the magic red pencil like, someone's editor and do that. I mean, that's not generally what, my perception is that's not in general what staff does, but, again, the standard is you can tell it looks different if, somebody driving by who's not an expert can say, oh yeah, that looks different. And again, I don't know what further could be done at this point. So can you tell me how it's going to be different with the motion that's on the table?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, I'm going to steal what Eugene was going to say first. With the motion, I would recommend that staff would make a determination that any proposal would meet the code requirement, not that it would be my personal opinion or determination, but to use the standard. That would be my first suggestion. We do talk with builders about the diversity requirement, and we do try to offer them suggestions for changes to their plans, whether they're single family or other. So we can do that. That's not a problem. And again, if the condition, the way it's written, is that we would not be able to approve a final development plan for this property unless it meets the code requirements, if that is what the motion is changed to. So if we can't do that, then the applicant could appeal it up to Planning Commission to have them have a determination. If I'm not being, how should you say, a willing person, but if they don't agree with my decision or staff's decision. But I also want to say that it's not just typically one person when we do this. We do try to use the other planners in our building inspection people to try to get their take on whether or not it does meet the building code requirements as well. So with that said, I'm done.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. My whole problem with this is that I see this as one development, not a new development. So I don't, this motion's been moved and seconded, and I'll vote for it. But I think we're nitpicking, trying to put a square peg in a round hole, trying to figure out, well, does it look like this? Does it not look like this? I can understand that we don't want every building to be white and blue. I remember sitting back here, sitting out there, watching a council discuss the color of yellow. And another member of council being an appellant because they didn't want a certain company to come in town on 66, North 66. And a member of council sat here and talked about the color of yellow. They didn't like the color of yellow. That's what we're doing. I understand the footprint. Having worked for a company that built apartment complexes, and seeing what they built. Did the buildings look the same? Yeah, there was 2 of them. Actually, there's 4 now on the CU campus. They're really beautiful buildings. They're very diverse inside. They're diverse on the outside, but they're brick. They have different gables and they have different roof lines. But they look the same, but they're different. But they're brick. It's the same color brick. That's diverse. I guess it's potato. Again, I understand you want the developer or the owner wants to make this look like the same development that says, yes, this is my property. This is one development. We are talking in circles, trying to figure out, well, can you put a bell tower in there? Can you make it 45 foot tall? You're gonna have to get a variance for that, by the way. Can you put a racetrack in there? You know, let's that's what we're doing. Looking at the footprint, and I'm on Google Maps, just looking at the footprint of this site, and looking at the pictures, yes, these buildings do look similar. From a 16 to a 14. I've lived in apartment complexes from here, Texas, Virginia. Do apartment complexes look the same? Yes. Do they have different colors? Yes. Do people not want them in their backyards? Probably. Is there a lack of apartment complexes in Longmont? Yes. What are we doing? I hope so. Well, I haven't had a chance to talk. I've been listening to you guys.
No, that was just joking.
But again, this is one development. I think eventually we need to talk about how that's going to work. If we have a development that's coming in that has multiple phases, we need to talk about if that's going to be how we look at that. If they're bringing in another phase in 10 years, that's not a new development. That's a continuation of the same development.
Councilmember Sinani.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. I think 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that I was the liaison to P&Z. And they had quite a thorough discussion, and they asked a lot of questions of the applicant and of staff. And I think the way that they viewed it was that it was a continuation of the development, if my recollection is correct. And as far as the diversity, that's when they suggested that the buildings' facades or colors be changed so that they wouldn't necessarily look the same. And I agree that the footprint of these buildings is such that there's not much that you can do from a design standpoint to make them look different other than to redraw them from scratch, which I don't think is really feasible from an economic standpoint. And I do believe that P&Z did a very good job in questioning and considering various alternatives in their discussions and recommendations. And right now, as Mayor Pro Tem Santos said, is we're starting to nitpick. I mean, even if they come back with a one-story, is that really going to be diverse? Because the other buildings are going to look the same. Is that diverse enough?
Gene, your mic's on?
It doesn't, I mean,
Okay.
so, as much as I appreciate the motion that was made, I will not be voting for it.
Mayor and Council, a couple of thoughts. I'm hearing a couple of things. One from Councilmember Bagley, he'd like the project to move forward. Mayor, I think you brought up a good point that we need to address as well, the riparian variance, that is part of the appeal. And that Councilmember Finley wants to see the architectural variation standard met. And we need to remember that this is a preliminary PUD, that these changes can be made between now and final, and staff will be getting a another look at the final PUD where some of these conditions, should council impose them, can be viewed and analyzed whether they've been satisfied. I also want to point out that in the packet, staff provided template resolutions, none of which fit, I think, exactly what council is proposing, and that's to be expected. But I think there's value in having written findings of fact supporting whatever decision you make. And to address that concern, council could make their motion and authorize the mayor to sign a resolution drafted by the city attorney's office and the planning department that reflects the conversation and the evidence we've heard here at the hearing, and memorializes the decision of council. So a couple of things to consider.
Councilmember Levison?
Yes, I would like to understand the motion as far as when we're going to be asked to vote yes on what it actually means to increase the architectural diversity. I guess it goes back to staff determination of whether or not it meets the standard of the code. I'm just looking for head nods, okay? And then the addition, so I'm wanting to know if we're not accepting, then what that also means is we're not accepting the trade-off that was proposed in the latest iteration that said, you know, the buildings will be 14 units, we'll remove some units of parking, that way we'll have less encroachment on this easement area, which would satisfy some of the concerns of the neighborhood. And how would that additional berming and screening come into play if the units go back up to 16, if it goes back up to 16 units, but there is diversity? How do we balance that with the additional berming and screening request as well? So I'm just trying to figure out how we incorporate all the balls that are being thrown in the air. And would we take a look at that resolution at a council meeting that you're proposing, Eugene, that would have the findings of fact that we have to lay out tonight?
Mayor and council, in the various templates that we provided to council on the April 9th council packet, there was one approving and one denying. What I'm hearing, and I don't mean to influence council's decision, but that you would be upholding and approving the riparian variance, denying the architectural variance, and requiring compliance with a code come final PUD. And so it would really be a hybrid of the approval and the denial variance. You know, you're approving the riparian part, pull that out of the template, pull the denial of the architectural variance out of that draft resolution, and kind of combining them. So in your packet is sort of the draft language, and it'd be substantially similar to those in the draft packet, except hybridized.
Well, I think it makes more sense to do that. Just take these two templates and merge them to essentially get what Bonnie stated in her motion, to basically make her motion this formal template that you guys prepare, so it's a better legal document, since this is a quasi-judicial.
And Councilmember Levison, to answer your question, I think council could do it either way. We could bring it back to council or authorize the mayor to sign a resolution in substantially the form of those two templates combined that were in the packet.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So after listening to my elder council members, Santos and Samori, I can either withdraw my motion or I can vote no against it, because I believe that they've convinced me that planning and zoning did their job and we should let them do their job, and I certainly don't want to pick the paint color on anybody's house.
I'll withdraw.
So you're withdrawing your, the second, who seconded it?
Mr.
I
Bagley.
don't really want to withdraw my second. I'm going to vote on the measure. But it's
Okay.
technically, I don't believe it's needed, so that's fine. I'll withdraw my second.
Councilmember Levison.
Yes, I'm a little conflicted here because I would feel more comfortable allowing the riparian variance because it seemed that the appellant was some of the appellant's concern about how much the encroachment was seemed to be addressed by what the developer gave back, but that's not, it doesn't seem like that will come through if all we're asking for is the additional berming and screening. It looks like the motion's going to go down in flames anyway. Well, I guess we don't have a motion because it was withdrawn. But I'm just, you know, on one hand, I'm happier with less parking spaces and less encroachment. I think that was a really great compromise that was proposed. But I still would like to see that diversity standard met. So I'm not going to vote to uphold the planning and zoning resolution as it was passed.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. I don't think we're picking out the paint, and I'm not necessarily saying that planning and zoning didn't do their job. I'm just saying that planning and zoning and us don't have the experience staff has, and I'm hearing that staff is giving them direction and guidance on how to comply with the code, and they didn't comply with that. And so I just think it's a good idea to do everything what our city attorney just said, approve the riparian setback, and give them direction to go back and just, it's architectural diversity. It doesn't seem like rocket science. I mean, just because they're saying that they've already got, I mean, what they want to build won't work with the code. That's what I'm hearing. Doesn't fly with me. And I mean, the Longmont, that's what we always do. We just build these cookie cutter stuff. So I'd like to see the architectural variance, and I would have voted for the motion as it stood, Councilmember Finley. So I don't know, where are we at? Somebody make a motion. Yeah, that we can vote for or against. But I guess I'll make one, which is, here's the motion. I move that we approve the P&Z. I move that we just basically say what Eugene May just said, that we approve the riparian variance, the setback, and we give instruction to the developer to work with staff to come up with architectural diversity that is in compliance with what has been done previously. And then once they're done, they come back to city council, we approve it, they build their buildings, the neighbors are happy.
So, no, it was,
what?
he drafts the resolution.
Oh, yes. Draft the resolution.
Right.
And then we approve it, and then they do those
No.
things. The mayor approves it?
Right. Yeah, I would sign it.
All right, that sounds good. We could do that. That's even better. It's on you, Mayor. I don't know what I'm saying. It's not even 11 o'clock yet. So I guess the motion is we do what Eugene May suggested, not suggested, but his definition. First, I move that we approve the riparian variance and setback.
Why don't you just do that first?
All right, I move that we approve the riparian setback and variance.
Okay. Councilmember Finley.
She's going to vote first. We're going to vote.
Clarification.
Councilmember Samori.
Is it based on the original? Yeah, that was approved by P&Z.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-1 with Councilmember Levison dissenting.
Now, continuing with the motion, thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also move that we now instruct the developer. I mean, can we instruct the developer? What's the appropriate terminology here? We basically say that we would be willing. What's the right terminology we should use here, Eugene?
Mayor and council, my recommendation was to deny the architectural variance and make a condition of the approval of the PUD compliance with the code provisions regarding architectural diversity.
So moved. And that they return, the developer returns with the resolution after working with city staff for the mayor's signature.
Just have Eugene prepare the resolution with.
Yeah. But he's going to, can you do that, Eugene?
In the planning.
Yeah.
City Attorney's Office in the planning.
So moved.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay.
Councilmember Samori.
Okay. What I was stating earlier when I talked about P&Z is that they followed the proper procedures. The applicant, any applicant, this one and others, has the right to come and request a variance for any project. And the applicant followed the process of requesting a variance. P&Z considered their request and after much deliberation agreed with the request. I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just telling you what the process was. So they requested a variance and the variance was approved. Okay, with a modification of making changes to the structures to make them different and not necessarily architecturally redesigned, but make them look different, which then the applicant complied with and came back with some changes. And I think that's where Councilmember Santos is saying now we're starting to nitpick the colors.
Councilmember Witt.
We can nitpick the colors, but what is being said is that the applicant has not met the standards of architectural diversity. And that, we're not talking about paint, we're saying you have to meet the standard. And that, no, they have not. They were given a variance, which presupposes that they did not meet standards. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, let's vote on the.
Then let's vote.
Okay, it passes 4-3 with Councilmember Santos, Councilmember Finley, and Councilmember Samori dissenting. Councilmember Santos.
The point I was making was that this is a continuance of an original development, not a new development. That's the point I'm making. That's the dilemma we've been trying to figure out.
Okay, I guess we're all done.
Nothing on y'all, nothing on y'all. That's the problem we have.
You know, maybe if this is going to be a continuing problem, we need to figure out if we need a different building code for large apartment buildings. But if that's what the code is now.
Yeah, it's definitely a code issue, and in talking to Joni,
Yeah.
there's some differences here because it was originally in a floodplain, which there wasn't the anticipation of anything happening. The work that we did created the space, so we're actually staff going to look at this issue and kind of maneuver through that discussion.
Okay. So we're at final.
Mayor,
Yes.
before we move off this item, so Councilmember Bagley was taking it piecemeal. The first one was riparian variance. The second one was the architectural diversity. I'm not sure we got to approve the PUD,
Oh.
the preliminary PUD.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask Valerie, our city clerk, to read back the motion, and I'm not sure that's possible.
Well, I can read back my understanding of the motion. That it is to deny the architectural variance and make it a condition of approval for the PUD that there be compliance with code requirements as verified by staff. Then have a resolution developed by the city attorney and planning staff for the mayor to sign.
They covered it. Need a minute?
Mayor and Council, we're trying to inventory the conditions. We don't recall the berming and screening being addressed, and I don't know if that was intentional or an oversight.
Councilmember Levison?
Yes, since the riparian variance has been approved, I would like to see the additional screening and berming. And I don't know if that was part of the original plan we looked at, or was there some additional berming and screening that was part of the appellant's request that we need to say yay or nay to?
Good, Don.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Levison, the original recommendation to PZ, the approval of the riparian variance had screening and berming requirements in it. But there was also additional discussion tonight from the council about providing additional screening and berming, and so we just want to make sure that if that was your intent, right now we don't see that there's additional screening and berming in what you have passed at this point. And that's fine, we just wanted to make sure that it wasn't missed.
And I think that in due respect to the appellant, that if the riparian variance was upheld, the least the council could do is ensure that there was an enhanced berming and screening, plant screening, so that there could be additional mitigation because of the variance. That, I guess I move that we have that additional screening and berming as a condition along with the code standard.
I'll second that. Let's vote on that. Okay, that passes 4-3 with Councilmember Santos, Finley, and Samori dissenting. Okay, I guess we're now done. It's time now for final call. Public invited to be heard. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this time? All right. Seeing no one, I'll close final call. Public invited to be heard. So now is time for mayor and council comments. Are there any council comments? Councilmember Samori.
Well, it's been a while since I've made an announcement as important as the one I'm about to make. Yesterday, there was a big birthday for one of the members of council, Mayor Coombs. I think it turned 75 or 85, I don't remember. But join me in wishing him a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mayor Coombs. Happy birthday to you.
Where's the cake?
Yeah,
Cake.
Yeah, where's the cake?
I think that was your job.
I got plenty of wedding cake I could bring in.
I bet you do.
Yeah, I should have. It's sitting on a snowbank right now. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I had the pleasure on Sunday of taking a class given by Longmont Police Department. It was a gun safety class out at the firing range, and it was incredibly instructive. I had taken a class previously for concealed weapons, and they covered more here in Longmont in a half an hour than I got in a whole day class somewhere else. So If anyone is considering taking those classes, I would highly recommend them. It was very instructive and a lot of fun, actually. I really enjoyed it. I also want to mention a business of the week. I understand there is a place called Mac's Place, which is a restaurant at 17th and Pace. They only serve lunch. So I haven't eaten there yet, but it's not open yet? Oh, well, when they open, we should all go and try it.
Councilmember Levison?
Thank you. I want to, well, we all know it's our retreat weekend, but I just also wanted to make sure that the public knew that we're going to be convening for our annual retreat at the wastewater treatment plant. Water treatment plant at near Lyons, and there are, I imagine the map and the address are posted on the city's website so they can find out where we are. Just want to make sure the public understands that anyone is welcome to come to retreat. We have public invited to be heard segment at both days of the retreat. And it's a great opportunity to come, and just one day of the retreat, is it just at the end? Do we just do public invited be heard at one day?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Levison, the public is invited. There's actually not a section on the agenda because there's lots of breaks in time for people to be able to talk with you. So there's not a section designated for it this year.
Okay. So there is no formal public invited to be heard, but it's an excellent way to see what the future planning for our work plan is going to be for 2013 into 2014, and just to have a more informal way of hearing council's thoughts on future planning in Longmont. The other announcement I'd like to make is a congratulations to city staff, Karen Roney and other staff members who put in an application for the National League of Cities Training Institute for Leadership Academy for a program called Cities Combating Hunger Through After School and Summer Meals program, which is called CHAMPS. And this is the second phase of the CHAMPS project, and I think that the first iteration last year was really the impotence of us trying to figure out how we would have a template in working with the school district and other partners, especially the school district, when there were these grant applications and opportunities that came just through National League of Cities. So the unique thing about this invitation to the Leadership Academy is that the applicants for the grant funding would only be drawn from the Leadership Academy, and we will be participating in that. So we have a pretty good a chance at winning a grant that could be between $30,000 and $60,000 even from some foundations and corporations to support feeding children in after-school activities and during the summer. And we have a great need for that in our community. So I want to say thank you to Karen Roney. I want to say thank you to the school district staff and our other partner at Community Food Share, I think we're working with too. Just want to say kudos to everyone who worked on the grant. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. The other day, the mayor and I and other council members that were there were able to go to the Longmont Area Economic Council's Cornerstone Awards Luncheon. So I'd like to recognize Genius Labs by V Auto that won the small technology category. They are a web-based software that they've created an automobile auction website. They took small business technology. Denivo, hopefully I'm saying that right, won large technology. I'm sorry, is that right? Denovo, excuse me. Thank you. Large technology category, high-tech product consulting company. Goddess Garden took the small manufacturing category. They do manufacturing organic skin products here in town. And then large manufacturing category went to Left Hand Brewing Company. So, they manufacture some pretty, from understanding, some pretty good beer on a large scale. So congratulations to all the winners there.
I'll correct it. They manufacture very good beer. Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, I heard somebody mentioning earlier today that Peyton Peterson, who came up and mentioned that there will be a film crew in Longmont starting in May, and they're looking for homes and businesses that have the architecture between 1940s, 1960s. They weren't sure on the website. The website is Film in Longmont, FILMIN, Longmont.com. So if you are interested in having your beautiful home or business in a movie, go to filminlongmont.com and submit your information, and they'll be in touch with you.
Okay, well, I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Deb Cameron and Peyton Manning because I totally spaced out a filming for broadband wireless. I mean, they've already forgiven me, but I wanted to do it. Peyton Peterson. Peterson. No, excuse me, Peyton Peterson. Anyway, I had all kinds of relatives and everything in their house, and I was in wedding mode, and I just didn't merge my one calendar with the other, and I just spaced out a 3:00 meeting for this taping yesterday, so it's rescheduled for Wednesday. But anyway, I'm sorry. I guess anybody else? So, City Manager, any comments?
Mayor, Council, just real quick on Peyton's information. He actually dropped by the office this afternoon with the production staff, and they're also looking at some city facilities. And so we will be having conversations and directing them to the appropriate staff members. And pardon? That was one that we mentioned based on time period, and so they visited a couple today, and we will be having that discussion. And yes, Councilmember Bagley, there are fees associated with utilizing those facilities.
I speak from experience. There's wear and tear. So.
Yep. So anyway, I just wanted to let council know that they are going to be talking to staff.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.